Do you seriously believe that the Western powers and other powers, Gulf powers, are going to change their policies towards Syria, whether it's now or in 6 months or in 1 year?
Only if they have to. I think Western forces, when they have to, they change policy. There's no problem with them. But that's why I feel that the strength of the Syrian people and the strength of the Syrian army is very important. And the defeat of these fundamentalists on the Syrian land is very important. That doesn't mean that we want a military solution to the problem, because at every juncture, as I said, we want a political solution to the problem. But in the meantime, we will not be defeated.
I learned that you had meetings with high officials in India, in Delhi. I was wondering, you could say with us what kind of feedback you got. Okay. Get some idea about Indian position with respect to this.
Okay.
That's the first question. The second is this: at some point, I think three months ago, there was an idea that was floated that one of the former vice president of Syria, who's currently under house arrest, he also gave an interview to CNN, was considered to kind of replace Assad so that the negotiations would take place and a smooth transition can take place. Was it a serious proposition? Apparently, Assad regime, of course, kind of ignored it. Former vice president.
Yes, I met with Indian officials. I met with the foreign minister, with national security advisor, and I'm very grateful for their hospitality and for the time they gave me. And I felt that they really understand, what I was talking about, and they sympathize. And the most important thing for me is that they agree on two issues. First, non-military intervention in Syria, which unfortunately is happening, actually. And the second, that it's not business of any country to tell president of any other country to leave, not only Syrian president, any other president. And the third, that decision should be made by the Syrian people. And I'm very happy with that. And I asked Indian officials to try and be more proactive in the BRICS meeting, forthcoming meeting in South Africa, because it's okay, to hear about Syria in the media, and it is of course now our problem that we are facing on our territory. But I truly believe that secular systems should support Syria, because what is happening on the Syrian land is not only targeting Syria, it's targeting secularism, and it's targeting tolerance, and it knows no borders. We, the Arabs, kept shying away from the Palestinian issue. And I wrote that. I was a columnist, and I was writing that in Arab newspapers. I wrote once, if we defend the Palestinians, we are defending ourselves. And I say now to Russia, India, China, those who are defending secularism and the rights of people in Syria to decide are defending themselves. Thank you. And the second one about Farouk al-Shara, I think it is, I said today that the West creates ideas that are so unreasonable. But because of the marketing, they keep marketing them that you think they are reasonable, I mean, they create things that they say to a president to step down. And because they market it so much, people ask us, why doesn't he step down? When is he going to step down? And then they put the Yemeni scenario, which they hailed, the scenario of Yemen. They brought the vice president and they put him in place of the president. Can I ask you, what do you think of the Yemeni scenario now? I mean, Yemen is in a civil war, And why should we take an example that hasn't proven any success at all? And why should they decide anyway who comes and who negotiates and who talks? We are an independent country, and we do not allow anybody to tell us who comes and who goes.
So the first question which Mr. Nihal Singh asked, to which you responded, that the West will change their policy if they are compelled to. Now, when you expect support from countries like India, Russia, China, and Brazil, Russia and China have a more consistent record of being interventionist. India does not have. It has not always stood up against regime change in most parts of the world. And when I say India, I mean the government of India. And its record, particularly in the course of the ferment in the Arab world in the last 2 years, is not cause for optimism that it can take a stand and make its presence felt. So you met the External Affairs Minister, you met the National Security Advisor. Have you met the Prime Minister? And do you have a tangible basis for an expectation that India will take a stand on from your conversations?
I haven't met the Prime Minister, and I feel that even if India has a record of non-interventionist, I don't think we are asking India to intervene as such, but to take a very strong and vocal and proactive stand in the international community. While the Western media is every day sounding the drums of any president who has to leave and the president who has to resign and the vice president who has to come, at least India should raise its voice and says this is non-democratic. And this is not the business of any Western country. It's the business of every country to decide for itself. I think it's in the interest of India. It's in the interest of the world. And this is my job, to try and highlight to Indian officials how important it is that they raise their voices. This is a sign also of independence, that a huge democracy like India is entitled to play a more important role on the international arena regarding this crisis. Especially that Syria is a secular country like India with many ethnicities and many religions. And I think, as I said, India would be defending itself and standing with itself by standing with Syria.
I wanted to ask you, Haitham Manna has been writing repeatedly in The Guardian. And in December he wrote and said that the Syrian people do not regard the Assad government as being their opponents, but as their saviors against those who want to destroy Syria. Has this had any impact at all upon the West, in your opinion? Is there any change in thinking in the US and in Europe at the moment? I ask this because The Economist recently gave the impression that Obama had just said, let whatever happens, happen there, and we're not going to do anything. Is this correct? I mean, are they just going to just destroy everything and then leave, saying, well, we'll do another Afghanistan or another Vietnam? What is your impression of what's going to happen now? And have you tried to has President Assad tried to contact people like Manna and so on? But on January 7th he said that he was prepared. He wanted to have a larger conference. Yeah. Because that would be the absolutely right answer to the West and to the Arab countries.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the West reaction to Haitham Manna is that they marginalized him because he didn't ask for military intervention, and he's probably the most reasonable among the opposition. And the president plan, yes, on the 6th of January, the president announced the plan to stop violence by all sides, to sit around the table for dialogue. And we are engaged in very serious efforts in Syria to invite everybody home for dialogue, even people who have prison sentences, whatever. There's a general clemency for anybody who wants to come and participate in formulating the future of Syria. So we are outreaching as a system, as a regime, for everybody, Haitham Manna and everybody. Anybody who wants to come is more than welcome. But I think there are people who wouldn't come and who would say, we will not come until President Assad resigns. I think they know that he's not going to resign, but they want to prolong the war. They want to prolong the destruction. That's what they want.
You'd mentioned Hillary Clinton's visit to Tunisia and literally ditching the people they were supporting first. We have all read about the various leaders of the opposition groups who claim that they are the people who should rule the country. I have a question, ma'am. In addition to the people who are known, the names that we read about in the media, do you have any information or any feeling that there might be some other people being kept in the background and being groomed to take over in the eventuality that the West is able to ensure a regime change? The reason I'm asking this question is that wherever you've seen an attempt at regime change, there have always been certain players who've been groomed quietly and who then step in at the critical juncture. Are there any people you are aware of living abroad? My specific reference would be there was a report of one of your generals who had defected to France. After his defection, we have not heard anything about him. Is there any rumor, any news that such specific people are being groomed to take over later?
Well, thank you very much for this question. As for the people who defected, like the General Munaf Atlas you are referring to, or even the ex-Prime Minister of Syria, I think, this is again one of the, before I answer your question, I'm going to comment on that. I think this shows to you the ignorance, really, of these people in Syria. And at one point, the Sunday Times wrote, Assad allies are being bribed to defect. Now there's no stress on defection because it didn't work. So they paid millions, of dollars for these people to defect and leave the country and make a big hurrah in the Syrian media that defected, and this means the regime is going to fall. And they found that all these defections did not really weaken the regime. As for your question, I would not be surprised, actually. To be honest with you, I don't have any information whether there are people who are being quietly groomed. I don't know. But I'm reading a book now I told everybody about. It's called Sir al-Ma'bad, The Secret of the Temple, by an Egyptian who was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. His name is Sarwat al-Khirbawi. And this book has been published only for 6 months, but it is already in its 25th edition, because he gives you documents how the Americans were working with the Muslim brothers in Egypt, even during the rule of Mubarak, and how they agreed with them. What is their attitude towards Israel? What's their attitude towards the West? What they are going to do? By names, Muhammad Mursi, Khairat al-Shatir, Assam al-Aryan, all of them had agreements quietly, as you said, with the Americans to come to power. So I would not be surprised. This is the way they do. They do their business under the table. They buy people, they bribe people, they groom people. They do anything they want. So I would not be surprised. But the reason why I feel confident is that most Syrian people can see what is happening. And most Syrian people do not want this terrible alternative offered to us by Turkey, by Qatar, and by the West. Because most Syrian people are secular people and are people with integrity who would like their national dignity, rather than to be agents to this power or that power.
Madam, I have been reading in the press about the situation in Syria, particularly before I came for this meeting today. And I think the situation is extremely serious. And it requires intervention at the top level by the government of India. I have worked in the government of India, mainly in the Home Ministry. If you tell me that you have not been able to meet the Prime Minister, I would be seriously concerned. Secondly, you know that India has already voted once with the US in the Security Council on the Syrian issue. So it's a matter for serious concern. Secondly, during my readings in the press today, I found from the website of the Economist that Syria has a family rule. Maybe somewhat like the Indian family rule.
No, that's not true.
It seems like that. I don't know. I read it from the Economist. The whole family is described for every question. So how do you respond to this?
Well, it's part and part. First, the situation is not more serious than it had been a year ago, But the press, as I said, the press is a main agent, really, in this war against Syria. And how could you say that Syria, how could the economists say that Syria has a family rule when during the time of President Hafez al-Assad or this time? Now, today somebody, a scholar, asked me, is there any Sunni in Bashar al-Assad government? I thought this is really amazing. You know, I mean, I hate to mention this word. I really hate to mention it. But I think there are, out of 30 cabinet ministers, there are 2 Alawite ministers, which is the religion of the president. The wife of the president is a Sunni. You know, our prime minister is Sunni, our foreign minister, our defense minister. I mean, this is ridiculous for us as Syrians, even ridiculous to talk about it, really. So anything in Syria but family rule. What disturbs the West is that Syria had free education, free health system. We eat from what we produce. We wear from what we make. We have independent minds. They were not able to allure us anywhere they want against the will of our people. That's why they want the destruction of Syria. It's not because they care about democracy. And the example of democracy they gave to us in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in Pakistan speaks volumes for their love of democracy.
Madam, if the impression that some of us have that there is an inextricable linkage between the Syrian issue and the Iranian question, if this impression is correct, especially for the West, because of Syria's relations with Iran, then do you see a resolution of the Syrian issue?
Do I feel?
A resolution of the Syrian issue without an adequate addressing of the Iranian question. I mean, this is a straightforward question. Because if you can't view the Syrian issue in isolation because of these linkages.
Well, I think the linkage between Syria and Iran in the minds of the West is the independent policies that Syria and Iran had been following. That is the linkage. Why do they link Syria and Iran and Hezbollah? Because these 3 parties that they can't control, really, and they can't dictate to. That is the linkage. Syria has been an ally with Iran for a very long time. But I think the way they describe it is that if Syria, God forbid, falls, this will weaken Iran, and then it becomes easier to address issues with Iran. And I mean, we do not link the problem with Iran in a sense that we can't isolate our problem from the portfolio of Iran regarding the West. We are 2 independent countries. The important thing is that we see eye to eye on many regional issues, and Iran supports us because they know that we are facing a very criminal fundamentalist war, just as we supported Iran during its war with Saddam Hussein. We were the only Arab country who stood with Iran during the war because we knew it was Saddam who launched the war. It wasn't Iran, and we knew that was bad for for both countries. So I don't know whether I don't know whether I can take what the West says about Syria or Iran. I am reaching a stage where I don't agree with their assessment at all. Now they seem to be having a good rapprochement with Iran. You know, their last meeting in Kazakhstan was a good meeting, and Obama said they want to solve the Iranian issue. But I would only put this question: why the West is fighting Iran for so many years and imposing sanctions on Iran, supposedly because of the nuclear issue, while Iran is a signatory of the NPT and it abides by the international will concerning nuclear issues, while Israel, who is not a signatory of the NPT and who everybody knows has over 200 warheads, and there's no issue with Israel. Why? I mean, this is double standard and hypocrisy. And that's why, if you ask me, I don't believe in their democracy, and I don't believe they want good things for our people, and I believe they are colonial powers who look down at us and who are only interested in our wealth or the geopolitical positions of our countries. That's all.
I want to ask you if it's just a coincidence that the main resistance to the imperialist design in that area and even beyond comes from Shias, whether it is the Hezbollah, whether it is the Alawite leadership, or it's Iran. And do you think that is what is causing a problem inside Pakistan also, where the Hazaras are being decimated and there is an onslaught on the Shia population in Pakistan also? Because you did not mention Saudi Arabia, for some, I don't know whether it's a tactical silence. You're talking about Qatar and Turkey. But Saudi Arabia is largely going to be responsible for the discovery of good Taliban, and there would always be a problem with the Shias as far as that is concerned. So do you think this is a coincidence or there's a pattern to it?
Well, I don't know whether it's a coincidence, but there's definitely this resistance, as you said, lie in Iran but Syria, I wouldn't say it's Alawite. You know, Syria is a country of resistance. Syria as a system, as a people, and it's not an Alawite system as they call it. But I do agree with you that the Wahhabi thinking is a thinking that would try to create war between Sunni and Shia and to try to segregate. And I do agree with you that Hamas, for example, with whom we had excellent relations on the basis of resistance, the political issue of resistance, during the Syrian crisis, it decided to be Muslim brothers rather than resistance movement, you know, and the same to Turkey. You remember Turkey and Erdogan and how he withdrew in front of Ban Ki-moon and sent his ship to Palestine. Erdogan was a leader of resistance in the Middle East for a few years, and he made his name on that issue. And now when it came to Syria, now and even in Turkey, his government is really undermining Ataturk's heritage of secularism and implanting instead Muslim Brotherhood thinking. I would love this to be the tendency of the future rather than a Shiite, you know, tendency. The issue of resistance, the issue of secularism, the issue of liberal thinking to be an issue for our future countries rather than just a Shiite line, although I acknowledge what you said. Much of what you said.
Yes. Do you think that the reforms you have brought in were a little too late? Because there was a lot of expectation that when Bashar Assad took over, that the regime would liberalize and democracy would come in. And that would have strengthened your resistance much more.
Thank you very much. You know why I'm smiling? Because for 10 years when we were negotiating with Israel from 1991 till 2000, every time we wanted to handle an issue, they would say, no, this would be too late. Too late for what? I don't know. You know, who decides what's late, what's not late? You know, I mean, President Bashar al-Assad introduced many laws that modernized the country, that opened for investment, that we introduced social economy, you know. But whenever we did anything, I mean, for example, I'll give you one example. We reviewed the constitution within 6 months from the beginning of the crisis. Egypt, until now, it hasn't drawn its constitution. Turkey, for 4 years, has been trying to put in a constitution, and it didn't do. So what is late? You know, late for whom? It is all pretext and language vocabulary formulated to make the other seem as if they are to blame. You know, but the design is very different.
Thank you very much for giving so many insights. I have just one specific question about your yesterday's interaction. One of the newspapers has quoted you, that you mentioned involvement of Indians in the Syrian conflict. I want you, if you can explain it. In India, so far, we had no trace of Indian Muslims particularly joining any global Islamic jihadi groups. Your statement back here has a very serious political and security consequences for the Indian Muslims who have been already hunted in the different contexts. Can you be more specific on what kind of proofs you have seen Indian Muslims or whatever in the global jihadi groups in
Well, I don't
Syria?
have, I was only...
You have been quoted in one of the newspapers today.
Arab newspaper.
Yeah, Indian newspaper has quoted.
شفتها شو بس مو أنا.
It has a very serious political and security consequences here.
I don't have any proof. I will tell you what. India is a country that is very dear to our hearts, and India is very important to us. But I tell you what happened in Syria. In Syria, for the last 20 years, money was flowing from Gulf states. Mosques were being built under the banner of Islam. Schools of supposedly of teaching Quran, which were not teaching Quran, were mushrooming all over Syria. And of course, every country is blackmailed by not talking to these people because this is Islam. And nobody should mention that, and nobody should stop that. But I'm saying now in India, and to the Indian authorities, and to the Indian people, watch it. Be careful, because there is a word of difference between Islam, I'm a Muslim woman and I'm very proud to be a Muslim woman, and between these Wahhabi, Takfiri people do. So I don't have information, but of course you had some terrorist attacks also in India. I don't know who is responsible for that. It's the Indian authorities who would know. But I am saying that watch it, because this doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes years to materialize and to show effect.
Madam Shaaban, Satish Jacob.
Yeah.
I hope you remember me. Thanks, I'm grateful to you for giving us the situation.
Thank you.
What's happening in Syria. But you haven't told us what is the condition of the Syrian economy at the moment, and what about medicines and things like that, because I believe there are sanctions against Syria. Can you share that with us?
Thank you very much. Well, not only sanctions, but as I said to you, 1,800 factories had been dismantled and looted to Turkey. Many of them are medical factories. As you know, Syria was exporting medicine before the crisis. Unfortunately, now we can't make our own medicine. The Syrian economy is not in a good shape because you cannot travel from one city to another. Although we have wheat, for example, in the northeast of Syria, we cannot move that wheat into Damascus because the armed gangs are on the roads who would loot, who would kill, who would prevent trucks from moving from one city to another. So the medical situation or the economy situation, while now is holding, but we do not want this war to last longer than this, because we don't know how long it would hold. A month, 2, 3, 4, we don't know. But we have the obligation to try and stop this war now. Thank you.
Yes.
Madam, what gives you optimism that India will support you when it has betrayed every Arab countries which has supported Kashmir, India on Kashmir? Every Arab country which supported India on Kashmir, India betrayed it. What gives you the hope?
We don't have this idea about India that it betrays Arab countries. We have the idea about India that it is a very good friend of Arab countries. We have a history of relations, very good relations. India is in the hearts of all Arab people, and we trust that India will take the right stand in support of Arab people.